You're entering another dimension, a world where the average twists into the extraordinary and the boundaries of reality blur. You've just crossed into the Twilight Zone. Created by Rod Serling, this anthology series first aired in the late 1950s for 5 seasons and over 150 episodes. Rod Serling explored the darker corners of the human experience in some of the most memorable stories ever told on television. Each episode served as a mirror reflecting society's fears, prejudices, and the complexities of the human condition. Its innovative storytelling, coupled with a unique blend of moral allegories and twist endings, have made it one of the most influential TV shows of all time. A New Year's tradition I had growing up as a kid was watching the Twilight Zone marathon on the Sci-Fi Channel with my family, so in the spirit of getting ready for the new year, today I'm counting down my top 10 favorite episodes of the Twilight Zone. I'll only go into minor detail and won't spoil any of the endings so you can enjoy the episodes yourselves. Without further ado, I bring to you my top 10 favorite episodes of the Twilight Zone. Number 10, The Fever. When a married couple wins a trip to Las Vegas, the wife, Flora, is thrilled to be there and excited to gamble. Meanwhile, her husband, Franklin, isn't as enthusiastic about the situation. He sees everyone in the casino to be lowlives and fools for gambling their money away, and forbids his wife to gamble at all.
What do you think you're doing?
Well, it's only a nickel machine.
Only a nickel machine? Why don't you just take handfuls of nickels and throw them out into the street?
On the way up to his room, a drunk gambler puts $1 in the slot machine and tells Franklin to pull the lever, where he wins a small jackpot. After experiencing the thrill of winning, he gives in to the temptation and starts a slow descent into madness, as this machine seems to have a mind of its own. Number 9, Nothing in the Dark. Wanda Dunn is an old woman living alone in a condemned building. A police shootout happens right outside her door, leaving a young officer injured at her doorstep. He knocks on the door, begging her for help, but she doesn't want to let him in, as she's afraid that the young officer might secretly be death in disguise coming to take her life.
You're lying. You're no policeman. Why can't you leave me alone? I know who you are.
Against her better judgment, she brings the officer in and tends to his gunshot wounds. The two start talking and she tells him that she has seen death in the past, just before people have died, and now she lives in constant fear of seeing him again.
But I've seen him since several times. I've seen him in crowds. I've watched for him. Every time someone I knew died, he was there.
The entire episode only takes place in this room, and the dialogue between the two characters tackles the themes of life and death with elegance and grace. Number 8, Will the Real Martian Please Stand Up? 2 police officers investigate reports of a UFO crashing into a nearby lake. They see footprints coming out of the water that lead into a nearby diner where a bus driver and his passengers are stranded due to the road being unsafe. When the police come inside and start asking questions, things become a bit suspicious.
You know how many you had? 6. Unless one of them fell out the window when we hit a bump. I picked up 6, and I'm supposed to deliver 6.
Nobody fell out. Somebody must have jumped in. There are 7 here now.
This means that whoever or whatever came out of the water is in the room with them, and as paranoia starts to set in, everyone realizes that someone among them is not human. The question is, who could it be? Number 7, The Masks. A wealthy man on his deathbed invites his daughter and her family to his house in New Orleans during Mardi Gras. The family all know that they're going to receive a large inheritance, so they are happy to see him die and get their money. The man knows that they're only there to get their inheritance, and truly doesn't care about him, so he presents a set of masks for each of them to wear until midnight, with the condition that if they take them off before that, they'll be written out of the will and won't receive anything. The masks represent the true characteristics of each family member, and the old man really lets them know how he feels about them.
And Paula there lives in a mirror. The world is nothing to her but a reflection of herself and her brother. Humanity to him is a small animal caught in a trap to be tormented. His pleasure is the giving of pain. Your caricatures, all of you.
The razor-sharp dialogue and great performances by the ensemble cast make this episode a highlight of the final season. Number 6, The Invaders. A woman living alone in a secluded cabin is preparing dinner. A loud noise starts coming from outside, and when she goes out to investigate, she discovers a small flying saucer that has landed on her roof. When she goes back inside, she discovers small aliens wearing spacesuits that walk around her home and start attacking her with futuristic weaponry. It then becomes a battle for her life as she tries to survive the night. This is a classic episode, and the little spacemen have become iconic characters of the show, also becoming fan favorites for just how menacing they are in this episode. Number 5, Night of the Meek. Legendary actor Art Carney plays Henry Corwin, a depressed mall Santa that lives in a poor neighborhood where the children who live around him never get anything for Christmas. He works in a mall in a much nicer part of town, but gets fired on Christmas Eve for being too drunk on the job. On his way home, he stumbles upon a bag of trash that magically turns into a bag full of presents, and he starts handing them out to people, only to discover that everything he pulls out of the bag is exactly what that person wanted most for Christmas.
It'll be your pleasure for Christmas, gentlemen. How about you, Bert?
I fancy a new pipe.
You fancy a new pipe? I'll see what I can do for you, Bert. Here's your new pipe for you. How about you, sir?
I want a sweater.
A sweater? What size?
Who cares what size?
As long as it's red. Sweater for you.
Oh, thank you.
This episode is heartfelt and full of Christmas spirit and is the perfect episode to watch around the holidays. Number 4, The Silence. A wealthy businessman at a men's club named Archie Taylor is constantly annoyed by a younger member named Jamie Tennyson. He thinks Tennyson talks way too much and makes a wager of $500,000 that Tennyson won't speak for an entire year. They turn the club's game room into a living quarters for Tennyson, where he can be monitored 24 hours a day to make sure he doesn't talk at all. Taylor has no intentions of playing the bet honest, and he taunts and mocks Tennyson constantly, even going so far as to tell him that his wife is out seeing other men.
As a matter of fact, she has been seen with other young men.
You may lose your wife, Tennyson. I hope you're fully aware of that. Why don't you leave, Tennyson? Why don't you leave right now?
Halfway through filming the episode, Franchot Tone, the actor who plays Archie Taylor in the episode, was in an accident that saw half of his face cut and bruised, which is why in several shots he's only showing half of his face. But I really feel like this does nothing but add to his sneaky demeanor. Rod Serling's brilliant writing once again takes center stage as what starts out as a crazy wager delves into themes of pride, competition, and control. Number 3, A Game of Pool. Jesse Cardiff is a pool player that thinks he's the best, but everyone keeps comparing him to another player named Fats Brown. In a fit of rage, he cries out that he would give anything to play one game against Fats just to prove that he's better. The only problem is that Fats is dead.
Fats Brown is dead and buried in the ground. And if he was alive and in this room, I could beat him. I'd give anything to play him one game.
Fats appears from the afterlife and accepts his challenge, but he tells Jesse that it's a game of life or death.
You beat me, and you live. You lose, and you die.
Jack Klugman and Jonathan Winters give outstanding performances in these roles. They do a great job of bouncing off one another, as Klugman speaks and acts erratically, while Winters is much calmer and more reserved.
Means a lot to you, doesn't it? Even as a dead man, have your name up there, the unbeatable champ of all times.
Carry certain satisfactions, yes.
I'll give you a chance at my crown, Jesse, but only if you're willing to stake your life on the game, Jesse. Couldn't be a nice, friendly little game, huh?
I take them as I find them. To you, pool is not a nice, friendly game.
This episode doesn't focus as much on the game itself, but rather the pressures that it takes to become the best at anything, and how obsessing over it can be a dangerous game in itself. Number 2, The Obsolete Man. This is the furthest I'll explain the plot in any episode that I've talked about so far. In a distant future, Rodney Wordsworth, a librarian, is being called to sentencing as the totalitarian nation that he lives in, known only as the state, declares him as obsolete, sentencing him to die within 48 hours. He tells the Supreme Chancellor that he would like his death to be carried out by an assassin, to which only he and the assassin knows how he will die.
That will be acceptable, Mr. Wordsworth, provided your liquidation is accomplished within the 48-hour period.
He also wants his death to be televised for the entire state to see.
Mr. Wordsworth, that can be arranged indeed. It's not unusual that we televise executions. It has an educative effect on the population.
I have no doubt.
He invites the Chancellor to his apartment, where he reveals that the assassin placed a bomb that would be going off in that room, but now the Chancellor is locked in there with him. Burgess Meredith made 4 appearances in the show, but this was his best performance of them. This episode is just as tense as it is cinematic, making this one of the best episodes in the entire series. Number 1, The Shelter. Dr. Bill Stockton is celebrating his birthday party with his neighbors and family in his home. The mood is jovial as toast and speeches to the doctor's good name are being sung, But then the entire atmosphere changes when an emergency broadcast announces that 2 unidentified flying objects are heading their way.
Both our distant early warning line and ballistics early warning line reported radar evidence of unidentified flying objects flying due southeast. We are declaring a state of yellow alert. The Civil Defense Authorities request that if you have a shelter already prepared, go there at once.
The doctor is the only person on the whole block with a bomb shelter, so he starts to gather supplies and prepare for the bombs to drop. But then, the rest of the neighborhood starts coming over to plead with the doctor to let their families into the shelter with them.
I kept telling you, Jerry. All of you, get ready. Build a shelter. Forget the card parties and the barbecues for maybe a few hours a week. Forget them and make the admission to yourself that the worst was possible. But you didn't want to listen, Gary. None of you wanted to listen. To build a shelter was to admit to the kind of age we lived in, and none of you had the guts to face that. So now you've got to face something far worse, Jerry.
What I love so much about this episode is how grounded in reality it is compared to other similar episodes that see friends and neighbors turning on one another. There are no aliens or supernatural phenomenon happening, just the dark reality of what humanity is capable of when we are fighting for survival. It was a cautionary tale for its time, but still holds a lot of weight today, and that's why it's my favorite episode. With over 150 episodes to choose from, it was hard to pick my favorite ones, but what do you guys think? Thanks to my friends and family who keep inspiring me to make videos like this, and if you're a fan of the show, comment your favorite episodes below. I'd like to hear what you guys have to say. Happy New Year, everyone.
That's the signpost up ahead. Your next stop, the Twilight Zone.